Hello and welcome back to AfaqIelts Easy Self-Study Pack. This is the third video in the listening test. In the previous video, we dealt with numbers that might sound confusing to the candidates during the exam. I also told you about part 1 and part 2 of the listening test. In this video, I will work on some other number forms in the listening test and will give you a brief description of parts 3 and 4 of the listening test. Both of these parts of the listening test happen in an academic context. Part 3 of the test is like part 1 and it is a conversation. It is between some academics, for example, two students or a student and a university teacher, and they're discussing some academic subject. This could be a term project that they have been assigned to carry out or something like that. Finally, part 4 of the listening test is a university lecturer who is delivering a speech or a lesson. This part, as I mentioned before, is part of a lesson or a lecture that a teacher is delivering. Part 4 is usually the longest in length and fastest in speech, and maybe the hardest in difficulty level. Numbers can come up in all the 4 parts of the listening test. One form of the numbers which might happen in the exam is talking about dates. When you talk about dates, you may talk about a day. For example, September 11th or the 11th of September. و شما این تاریخ رو میتونید به هر صورتی که خواستید در پاسخنامه خودتون وارد کنید. مثلا به اینها نگاه کنید. حتی اگر کلمه سپتامبر رو با حرف کوچیک هم شروع کنید اشتباه نخواهد بود، چون در آزمون لیسنینگ نمره بابت این از شما کسر نخواهد شد. اما اگه دستخط خوبی ندارید، برای اینکه از اشتباه جلوگیری کنید سعی کنید تمام پاسخاتون رو با حروف بزرگ وارد کنید. برعکس کپیتالایزیشن که باعث کسر نمره از شما نمیشه، سپلینگ در تست لیسنینگ بسیار مهمه. بنابراین دقت بکنید که کلمات رو با سپل صحیح وارد پاسخنامه‌تون بکنید. In addition to talking about a day in this way, you may have to write your answers about years. Look at these figures for years. How do you read them? Yes, 1066, 1505, 1666, 1945, 1969. البته تاریخ‌های قرن جدید رو امروز بیشتر شبیه یه عدد ریاضی میخونیم، ولی 2 به 2 هم میشه خوندشون. مثلا به این تاریخ‌ها دقت کنید. اونها رو میتونیم 2005, 2010, 2022 بخونیمشون، ولی 2005 یا 2010 or 2022 would also be okay. Figures and numbers about decades and centuries can appear in the IELTS exam too. عبارت‌های شبیه in the late 60s, in the early 70s. یا عبارت‌های در مورد قرن، مثلا in the 10th century, in the 16th century. I believe examples can help you understand these much better. So let's listen to a couple of IELTS test listenings.
In 1992, polls showed that 1 out of 2 Scots favoured independence from England.
Well, as you heard in the first sentence, it spoke about the polls and it mentioned the date 1992. So in the blank space, you would put 1992 when the Scottish preferred to become independent.
Robbie Burns, Scotland's most revered poet, was born on January 25th, 1759 in a cottage in Alloway.
Number 2. In this example, it's mentioning one of the most revered Scottish poets, and it mentioned that he was born on January 25th, 1759.
In 1302, the conquering English king Edward I gave the title of the Prince of Wales to his eldest son?
Number 3. The title of Prince of Wales was first used in 1302. So the number in the blank space would be 1302.
The Snowdon Mountain Railway, built in 1896, will take you to the top daily in just under 60 minutes.
Number 4 mentioned the Snowdon Mountain Railway. So when was it built? Yes, it was 1896. That's good.
What is it?
Well, I think you might have a problem.
Why? What is it?
Well, it says here that the deadline is January the 9th. That's next week.
Where? Let me see. Oh, you're right. Which prospectus is this?
The Henry Music Institute.
Oh, no. What am I going to do?
Make your decision now.
Is the closing date the same for all of them?
Let's check. Look here. Leeds Conservatory of Contemporary Music is on the 19th, but the Academy in London isn't until the 30th of this month.
OK, I'd better hurry up and make a decision.
For number 5, she was talking about the deadlines for different music colleges, and here it mentioned that Leeds Conservatory of Contemporary Music, and the deadline for it was January 19th, not January 9th. So the correct answer would be choice B, 19th.
Anyway, what I need to do next is find out more about the period, get a bit more background information.
Well, we can do that now. Let's see. Neolithic period, history. Okay, there are loads of websites. Let's try this one. Oh, this lists key moments in and features of the Neolithic period in Britain. Any good?
I guess so.
So, the Neolithic period, which occurred towards the end of the Stone Age, started approximately 9,000 years ago and lasted for about 5,000 years.
So, for question 6, for the first blank space, they are talking about the Neolithic period and she is reading out information to her partner. And she mentioned that the Neolithic period started 9,000 years ago.
At first, people lived in nomadic tribes and wandered throughout Europe hunting and gathering.
Nothing I didn't know already, unfortunately.
But about 8,000 years ago, Britain became separated from mainland Europe when the sea covered low land between what is now England and France. That must be pretty important.
So, for the second blank space, as it mentioned, Britain became separated from mainland Europe and the time mentioned was 8,000 years ago. So, the correct answer, which goes into the blank space, is 8,000.
So people couldn't get back to mainland Europe, which could mean they started evolving differently, socially and culturally, that is.
It doesn't say. But it does tell us that between 5,000 and 6,000 years ago, they started building houses that were permanent rather than temporary, which indicates they were becoming more settled. A connection, do you think?
So, for the third blank space, now, here she mentioned between 5,000 and 6,000 years ago, they started making permanent houses, or you would put in the blank space 5,000 to 6,000 years ago. So that would make the answer.
Possibly. What else?
Other solid structures started appearing. Stone circles like Stonehenge, for example. Actually, that came a bit later, about 4,500 years ago. It says here that it was built in several different stages over many hundreds of years. I didn't know that. I'd always assumed it all went up at once.
Yeah, me too. That is interesting.
OK.
And for the last blank space, which mentions the building of structures like Stonehenge, As you heard, she mentioned 4,500 years ago. 4,500 years ago.
The trumpet in one form or another has been around for a long time. The earliest type we have actual proof of was a short, straight instrument used with marching soldiers by the ancient Egyptians' 18th dynasty, which makes it 3,500 years old, although other cultures in China and Peru certainly had something similar very early on. This use of the trumpet in military contexts, as well as at ceremonial occasions, was to continue through the times of the ancient Greeks and Romans, but it wasn't until the 17th century that it became a genuinely popular instrument, at least in the West. At the beginning of the 18th century, it was finally accepted as part of the typical orchestra, and the addition of valves in the 19th century, making it much more versatile, consolidated its position as a major orchestral instrument.
For number 7, in the first blank space, it speaks about ancient Egypt, and it talks about the Tang dynasty 3,500 years ago. Or actually, it mentions that it's 3,500 years old. So, the answer is 3,500. For the second blank space, you hear different dates. The first date mentions that it became a popular instrument. So, the correct answer is became orchestral instrument. So, the first one, 17th century, is not the correct answer. So, it speaks about at the beginning of 18th century that it was accepted as part of the orchestra. So, the correct answer for this one in the second blank space would be 18th century. Good. I guess there were enough examples. Another type of numbers that you might come across is serial numbers, which include credit card numbers, telephone numbers, and other types such as purchase codes, home numbers, and student codes. These are often read out one by one, and sometimes, in case of repetition of a digit, as 1. For example, 33, or 66, or 007. These types of questions mostly happen in part 1 of the listening test, but they might occur in other parts as well. Here are a few examples for you.
What do I have to do now?
I just need to take down a few details. Right. First of all, I need your name.
It's Andrea Davenport.
Is that D-E...
No, it's D-A-V-E-N-P-O-R-T.
Davenport.
So, for this part, the first example is a name. So, first of all, I need your name. And as you heard, she spells her last name. D-A-V-E-N-P-O-R-T. So that's Andrea Davenport.
Okay. And can I take some contact details?
Yes.
Let's start with your address.
It's 90 Fortnum Mansions, 62 Park Avenue.
Could you spell that for me?
It's F-O-R-D-E-N-H-A-M and then Mansions.
And for the second blank space, you have Fortnum. F-O-R-D-E-N-H-A-M. And she mentions 90 Fortnum Mansions. And...
Okay.
62 Park Avenue, and that's London, SW1 4PQ.
You have 62 Park Avenue. 62.
And a contact telephone number?
My home number is 887-6451. I work in the afternoons, so the best time to ring is in the morning.
And she mentions her contact telephone number and she gives her home number. It is 8876451.
Good morning, Sidmouth Museum. Can I help you?
Oh, yes. Good morning. I'm interested in the children's workshops, and I'd like a little more information, please.
Do you mean the art and craft workshops?
Yes, a friend of a friend mentioned them. The children do painting and make models and so forth.
Yes, of course. Where to begin? First of all, as you probably know, they run every Saturday.
Fine. And what about ages?
Well, all ages from 5 upwards are welcome, though we do ask that children below 8 years of age are accompanied by an adult.
Fine. That wouldn't be a problem.
In the second example, as you might hear, you've got two speakers, and the lady, interestingly, has North American accent. And as I mentioned, that sometimes you come across North American accent. For the first example, it mentions that adults must accompany children that are under 8 years of age. And
what about cost?
Well, I think you'll find them very reasonable. It's £2.50 a child, with 80 pence off for 2 or more children from the same family.
Oh, yes, very reasonable.
The second blank space, it's talking about the cost, and he mentions it. It costs £2.50.
And are they held in the main museum?
Not exactly. They're nearby.
Could you give me the full address? I don't know the area very well.
Yes, it's Winter House.
Right.
And that's in Tamer Street.
Could you spell that, please?
Yes, T-A-M-E-R Street.
Lovely.
And I do need to tell you that there's a security entrance, so you need to press the green button for someone to let you in. Don't press the red button, please. But don't worry, it's all clearly labelled.
Okay. And one more question. Is parking available nearby? We're driving in from out of town.
Your best bet is to leave your car at the back of the library. On a Saturday morning, there are plenty of spaces there. It's right next door to the museum.
And can I ask about booking places?
Yes, and I must tell you, you really should book by calling the education department here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Should I have rung them instead of the main museum number?
No, that's fine this time. Please don't worry. But for future reference, I'll give you the direct number. It's 200-765.
Great. I've got that.
And the telephone number, the third blank space, is 200-765 or 200-765. As you may have noticed from these two examples that I provided, people were spelling names here too. در مورد اسامی همونطور که گفتم، اسامی و حتی کلمات باید با املای صحیح نوشته بشن. یادتون باشه که این اسامی معمولاً اسامی افراد یا میتونن مکانها باشن و هر وقت که در آدیو میشنوید که یکی از گویندگان شروع به سپل کردن یک کلمه کرد، حتما اون رو یادداشت کنید، چرا که حتما یکی از پاسخهاتون همون کلمه خواهد بود که سپل شده. بنابراین هرگز از اونها به سادگی نگذرید. یه نکته‌ای که در اینجا باید مطرح بشه اینه که در سپل کردن کلمات تلفظ حروف الفبا در بریتیش انگلیش باید در نظر گرفته بشه. از اونجایی که معمولاً زبان آموزان با تلفظ امریکن در طول یادگیری بیشتر سر و کار دارن که معمولاً هم دلیلش انتخاب پکیج های امریکن در آموزشگاه زبان هستش یا شاید زبان آموزان با امریکن انگلیش بیشتر مانوس هستن. و بنابراین خیلی از این زبان آموزا با صداهای حروف در بریتیش انگلیش به مشکل برمیخورن. مثلا تلفظ حرف A حتی گاهی در بریتیش انگلیش به صورت I تلفظ میشه، مثل کلمه شبیه پیپر و دی، و این براشون بسیار نامعنوسه. یا احتمالاً همگی در مورد تلفظ حرف R شنیدید که کلمه‌ای مثل for در هنگام اسپل شدن ممکنه برای خیلی از شرکت کننده ها مشکل به وجود بیاره. یا حتی کلمه‌ای مثل saw که در دو تلفظ بریتانیایی و امریکن خیلی متفاوته، saw و saw. البته با تمرین اسپل کردن کلمات و شنیدن بیشتر حتما از پس این کار میتونید بر بیاید. ازتون میخوام حتما به وبسایت AfaqIelts هم مراجعه کنید و چند ویدیویی که در رابطه با تلفظ صداها و حروف گذاشته شده رو تماشا کنید و باهاشون تمرین کنید. اینها حروف رو با تلفظ بریتانیایی، امریکن و حتی استرالیایی براتون انجام میدن تا با این صداها مأنوس بشید. Now, let's do some practice on IELTS question types where you might pay attention to spelling. Here, we have an example of a mix of questions in part 1 of the IELTS with numbers and names.
I just need to check your personal details to complete this online form, and then we'll be sorted.
Okay, what do you need to know?
Firstly, I need to make sure I've got your full name. It's Mike Wood, right?
Yep.
Right. Next, I need your address.
It's 17 Hanley Gardens. Hanley spelled Hanley.
Just writing that down. 17 Hanley Street.
No, Gardens.
Oops, my mistake.
Well, very good. As you heard the answer, it was 17 Hanley Gardens. Well, remember the difference between 17 and 70? It's 17 and 70. Here the answer was 17, 17. And Hanley Gardens. You remember that he spelt the word Hanley, Hanley, gardens. And remember, she confused gardens and street and he corrected her. So it was 17 Hanley Gardens.
Okay, what's your date of birth?
That's 23/07/70.
Well, you can see in the question sheet DOB, that stands for date of birth, and it was 23/7/70. Again, 1970. And the month 7, it is July. So you can write 23/7/70, or you can simply write 23rd of July 1970. Either answer would be correct.
Right. So now I need an emergency contact number. It's your mobile, right?
Yes, it's 0793 245 098.
Was that 089?
No, 098.
Well, she requested a contact number. Here, remember that in telephone numbers or what kind of number that you might hear, any kind of number that you might hear, you usually get corrections. So be careful when the number is corrected. Here, the correct number was 0793245 098, not 089. You remember that? He corrected her at the end and said 098.
Anything else?
Well, they need the main policyholder. Who would that be?
I think that would be you, since you're paying for it with your card.
Of course. So I just type in Julie Bennett. Hang on, just typing B-E-N-N-E-T.
N-N-E-T-T.
That's it. Just like most of part one questions, when you get names, if the names are unusual names or not very common names, you get the spelling. Here she spelled her name. It was B-E-N-N-E-T-T. Bennett.
Okay, we're just about done. All I need to do is enter the dates of departure and return.
Well, we leave on Friday, which is the 16th.
No, it isn't. It'll be the 17th.
Are you sure? Let me check my calendar. Oh, yes, the 17th.
All right. Date of departure. نکته‌ای که توی پارت 1 ها دارید خیلی از اوقات بچه ها کرکشن ها هستش، یعنی یه دیتی، یه عددی، یه شماره داده میشه و بعد ممکنه کرکشن بیاد. یادتون باشه معمولاً آخرین عددی که گفته میشه عدد صحیح هست. So here the correct answer was 17th of July. He again spoke about 16th of July, but he made sure by checking that it was 17th of July.
Right. So Friday the 17th of July and returning on Friday the 31st.
Hang on. If we fly out on Friday the 31st in the evening, it'll be the morning of Saturday the 1st by the time we get back, with the time difference. We don't want our policy to run out before we land now, do we?
No, we don't. Okay, so return date is Saturday the 1st of August. Okay, my goodness, that certainly took longer than I expected it to. I hope our trip is worth it.
Trust me, Julie, you'll love it there, especially as you'll have your own personal guide.
Okay, about the date of return. همونطور که اینجا هم دیدید ببینید بینشون باز یه کرکشنی انجام شد. دختره گفتش 31، این گفت ما قبل از اینکه بشینیم این روز در طول پروازمون تغییر میکنه، پس میشه اول ماه. بنابراین the correct answer was 1st of August, not the 31st. So remember again, in part 1 questions, corrections are very important. So be careful when a number, a name, or an address, or whatever is corrected. All right, now let's listen to another part 1 examples where names are given.
We've been having some problems with it, but I can take the order over the phone if you like.
That would be great. It's a gift, you see.
Can I take your name, please?
Yes, of course. It's Zara Freeman.
Is that Zara with an S or a Z?
With a Z. Z-A-R-A.
Just writing that down.
Again, there was a correction. He asked her if the name was with an S and she mentioned it was Z. Zara. Z-A-R-A. یه دقتی روی پرونانسیشن حرف R داشته باشید که تو بریتیش انگلیش وقتی که پرونانسش میکنن میگن و که با امریکن انگلیش که شما بیشتر ممکنه آشنا باشید R یه خورده فاصله داشته باشه و اینو دقت بکنید هر جا دیدید میشنوید.
Right. What was the title of the book you'd like me to order?
I think it's called Future Words. No, hang on. Sorry. That's Future Worlds.
Okay, just typing that in.
And in this one, the question is title or name of a book, which was Future Worlds. That's W-O-R-L-D-S. Again, she made a mistake, pronounced it words at the beginning, but made a correction. Worlds.
I can't seem to find it. Do you know the name of the author? I'll do a search.
Yes, it's by a man called Richard Watson.
Watson, as in W-A-T-S-O-N.
Yes, that's...
And for the last question, the name of the author was Richard Watson, W-A-T-S-O-N. Okay, this was the video connected with numbers and spelling. In the next video, I will help you with the important techniques that you might need for the listening test. Techniques such as chunking, using grammar knowledge, paraphrasing technique, and most importantly, focusing on keywords in the listening test. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.